My stepdaughter demanded I bankroll her single mom journey and insulted me when I refused. My wife took her side, so I filed for divorce, cut them off, and what happened next was shocking. Hello Reddit I+ here. My name's Grant, I'm 45, and if you told me 5 years ago that I'd end up divorcing my wife over her grown daughter's entitled behavior, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am, living alone in a quiet house that used to be filled with laughter and chaos, trying to understand how everything I built fell apart over one spoiled 20-something's bad decisions. Let me back up, because none of this happened overnight. I met Tessa 6 years ago at a local charity run. I was managing logistics for the event. She was there volunteering with her dental practice. She had this sharp, witty personality, the kind of woman who could out-argue a lawyer and still charm a room right after. She was 43 then, divorced for a few years, with 2 kids from her first marriage, Noah, who was 25 at the time, and Haley, who was 21. I'd never been married, but I'd also learned at 29 that I couldn't have biological kids. Infertile. Permanent. That news wrecked my last serious relationship. So when I met Tessa, it almost felt like fate was cutting me a break. She already had her family. I could finally love someone without the shadow of what I couldn't give hanging over me. For the first couple of years, it was great. Tessa was stable, hardworking, and independent. Noah had already graduated college, paid his own way, and landed a solid job in Phoenix. He's the kind of guy any parent would be proud of. Humble, driven, and respectful. We got along immediately. Haley, on the other hand, let's just say she was a project. When I first met her, she was sweet, but lazy. She'd dropped out of community college to figure things out, and spent most of her days posting on social media about becoming an influencer, whatever that means. Tessa used to roll her eyes and say, "She'll grow out of it. She just needs a little direction." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. At first, Tessa and I agreed on how to handle Haley's nonsense. When Haley lost her part-time job because she kept showing up late, Tessa said, "Actions have consequences." When Haley asked to borrow $500 for a concert trip, Tessa told her, "Get another job." I thought, all right, we're a team. We'll raise this girl into a responsible adult. But then, slowly, the boundaries started to blur. It started with Haley's car situation. She wrecked her old beat-up Civic because she was texting and rear-ended someone at a stoplight. I said she needed to buy a new one herself. Tessa agreed, at first. A week later, she pulled $6,000 out of her savings and helped Haley buy a used Hyundai. Her reasoning? She needs reliable transportation if she's ever going to get her life on track. I kept my mouth shut, even though I knew exactly how that would end. And of course, 6 months later, it did. Another accident, another excuse, another round of tears. When I suggested we let Haley face the consequences this time, Tessa told me, "She's already feeling awful. She doesn't need more guilt from you." That was the first time she ever snapped at me about her daughter. I brushed it off, but something shifted that day. Then came Darren, Haley's boyfriend. She met him at some outdoor festival. He was 28, heavily tattooed, drove a Dodge Charger with blacked-out windows and called himself DJ Ash. I swear to God, I thought it was a joke when she first introduced him. But no, he was serious. That was his stage name. Except the only stage he seemed to stand on was the couch in our living room when he crashed there for a few nights. He had no steady job, just random gigs that paid in exposure. Tessa hated him at first, too. We both did. But over time, I noticed her tone softening. "He's trying," she'd say. "At least he makes her happy." Sure. Nothing says happiness like a grown man borrowing gas money from your mom. The baby announcement. Then one night about a year ago, everything exploded. We were sitting at dinner, me, Tessa, and Haley, when Haley suddenly blurted out, "I'm pregnant." Tessa dropped her fork. I froze. Haley looked way too proud for someone delivering that kind of news. She went on about how she and Darren were starting a new chapter, how this baby was a blessing, and how she wanted to raise it her own way. After the shock wore off, I asked the obvious question, "Where are you two planning to live?" She said, "Well, here for now. You have the space." Tessa stayed silent. I said as calmly as I could, "That's not happening." That's when the yelling started. Haley accused me of not caring about family. Tessa told me to be supportive. I told them I wasn't about to let a jobless DJ and his pregnant girlfriend move into my home rent-free. It got ugly. Haley stormed out in tears. Tessa said, "You didn't have to be so harsh." I told her, "Someone has to be realistic." That night, she slept in the guest room. A month later, Haley came back. Alone. She sat at the kitchen table, all smug confidence, and told me she was keeping the baby, but that she needed help to get on her feet. By help, she meant money. She wanted me to pay her rent for a new apartment, cover her medical bills, and maybe get her a used car again. I just stared at her for a second and said, "Why should I do that?" She said, "Because you're basically my dad." I said, "Then maybe you should start treating me like one." That's when she snapped. She called me a bitter old man who was jealous because I couldn't have kids of my own, said I was emotionally sterile too. I didn't even yell. I just stood up, looked at her and said, "Get out." Tessa came home to find her daughter crying in the driveway. When I explained what happened, she didn't defend me. She said, "She's hormonal, Grant. You could have handled it better." That was it for me. Something in me just shut off. 2 weeks later, Tessa packed a bag and went to stay with Haley. She said she needed space, so I gave her exactly that. A month after that, I filed for divorce. The house was in my name, always had been, so legally it was simple. Emotionally, though, it gutted me. I didn't even tell her when the paperwork was finalized. She found out when her lawyer called. She texted me a few days later, "You didn't have to throw us away." I typed back, "I didn't throw you away. You left when you chose her over us." I never heard from her again after that. It's been 8 months. I'm living alone again. The silence is strange, but peaceful. No more slammed doors. No more midnight arguments about money that wasn't even mine to spend. No more pretending to be a stepdad to someone who only saw me as an ATM. Sometimes I think about Tessa, how good we were before Haley's chaos consumed everything. I don't hate her, but I'll never forgive her for letting her grown daughter destroy what we built. Maybe I'm the villain in their version of the story. Maybe I'm the cold-hearted man who refused to help family, but the truth is, I did help, for years. Until helping started to mean erasing myself completely. And that's when I realized there's a difference between being a provider and being a fool. I chose to stop being both. 8 months after the divorce, I'd finally started to feel something close to peace. My house. The one that used to echo with slamming doors, Haley's laughter, and Tessa's late-night pacing, had gone quiet. I won't lie. It was lonely at first, but it was also calm, predictable. For the first time in years, I could walk through my own living room without tripping over someone's purse or baby stroller box. I started working out again, took up woodworking in the garage, even joined a hiking group that met every Saturday. Life was slow, steady, and mine. Then, 3 weeks ago, I got an unexpected knock on the door. It was early evening. The sun was setting, and I was in the middle of sanding a table I'd been building for my neighbor. When I opened the door, my first thought was that I was seeing a ghost. There stood Tessa. Same green eyes, same expression that could shift from anger to heartbreak in a second. Except this time, she looked worn out. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen. She was clutching a small purse like it was all she owned. "Hey, Grant," she said softly. I didn't move. I just stood there, leaning on the doorframe, waiting. She sighed. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I didn't know where else to go." I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The story unfolds. She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she and Haley once announced the pregnancy. Now, it was just her. After a few minutes of silence, she finally spoke. "Haley had the baby 2 months ago. A girl. Beautiful. But things haven't been easy." I stayed quiet. "She and Darren broke up," she continued, her voice cracking. "He's gone. Disappeared a week after the baby was born. No job, no child support, nothing." I nodded slowly. "I can't say I'm surprised." Tessa flinched at the bluntness, but didn't argue. "She's staying in a small apartment. Can't afford rent. She's working part-time at a grocery store, barely getting by. I've been helping when I can, but my hours got cut at work. I'm behind on my mortgage." Then she looked up at me, that same pleading look I'd seen too many times before. "I didn't come here for me," she said softly. "I came here because she needs help. The baby—" I cut her off. "Stop," she froze. "Don't use that baby as a ticket back into my life." "Not again," Tessa's lip trembled. "She's your step-granddaughter, Grant. Doesn't that mean anything?" I laughed bitterly. Step-granddaughter? The woman who told me I wasn't her father, that I'd never be family? You expect me to care now because she got herself into another disaster? Tessa looked down. She was wrong. I was wrong. I see that now. But please, don't punish the baby for our mistakes. I'd be lying if I said her words didn't hit something deep. Because that baby, innocent, blameless, was suffering because of 2 people who couldn't get their lives together. Part of me wanted to help, to hand over a check, make the problem go away, and feel like I'd done the right thing, but I'd done that before, for years. And every time, it only led to more chaos, more demands, more blame when the money ran out. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared at the fading sunlight. "Tessa," I said quietly, "you remember when you told me I was too harsh? That Haley just needed time?" She nodded slowly. "It's been 6 years. Time's up. She started crying softly, covering her face with her hands. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't, not this time. Before she left, she paused at the door. You really won't reconsider? Not even for the baby? I shook my head. No, because every time I help, you treat it like an obligation, not a kindness. And every time you come back, it's never about fixing things. It's about fixing bills. She swallowed hard. You've changed. I looked her straight in the eye. No, Tessa, I finally stopped being your safety net. She didn't say another word, just nodded and walked out. That night I sat on the porch thinking about everything, about the years I'd spent trying to build a family that was never really mine. It hurt to imagine that little baby growing up in chaos, but I knew one thing for sure. Stepping in again wouldn't save anyone. It would only drag me back into the storm I finally escaped. A few days later, Noah called me out of the blue. He'd heard about the situation from a relative. Don't feel guilty, he told me. You did more for them than anyone else ever did. Sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do. For yourself, I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until he said it. It's been a full year since that night. I never saw Tessa again, though I occasionally hear updates from mutual friends. Haley's working 2 jobs now. She's still struggling, but she's doing it without my help. Maybe that's what she needed all along, reality. As for me, I sold the house, moved into a smaller cabin by the lake an hour away, built my own workshop, started crafting furniture full-time. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I think back to that version of me, the man desperate to hold a family together that didn't want to be held. And I realize letting them go wasn't cruelty. It was freedom. Because sometimes, love isn't about fixing people. Sometimes, love is knowing when to stop trying.